So I got to tell you, in the past, it's kind of typical that God will kind of give me a little topic or something. He'll put something on my mind, and there'll be a little period where he'll give me a little tidbit here and a tidbit there, and things kind of come together. And I know, okay, somewhere down the line, there's going to be an opportunity to come up, and this is going to come together. This is going to be, where this is used. And usually somewhere, a few weeks, maybe a couple of months or whatever, down the line, sure enough, an opportunity will come up, and, then I'll focus on putting the finishing touches on it, and also, that wasn't the case for tonight. Phil came up to me about a week and a half ago and said, by the way, did I ask you to fill in for me on Wednesday the 24th? No, you didn't. He said, okay, I'm asking you. Well, God hadn't given me anything, nothing. So I thought, well, okay, God, here I am. What you got for me? Nothing. Crickets. About 3 days of just deafening silence. I figured, God, you got to give me something. It takes me a while to put things together, and so I was coming through town, and I'm kind of making my rounds, and I noticed that there were probably, 4 or 5 storage facilities that were either under construction or just newly finished and were, grand openings and all. And then past that, I noticed, well, that's right on top of this other one that was just a mile away, and then there's another one over here. And I'm thinking, good heavens, we got more storage facilities than we got Mexican restaurants, And we're covered in Mexican restaurants, so what's up with this? And I kept thinking, who in the world has got so much stuff that we need this much storage facility? And that's when God said, now, there's your starting point. Now sit down and listen and start writing. And this is where he's taken me, this title. So, you got any stuff? And again, I'm telling you honestly, this is as much or more so at me than it is at any of you. Because boy, have I been through this. There's your sheet. We're just getting started. So, as you'll notice there, if you've kind of read through a little bit and which I'm not going to read this to you. Y'all can read, but what I really am hoping for is that we'll generate a good discussion tonight. I want to hear from you. So, you figure a 5 by 5 space. All right, I'm 6 foot tall. That's a foot shorter than me. Square. $50 a month. 5 by 5. That 15 by 20, that premium space, $295 a month is what people are paying. And think of it. How many, just think of when you're riding around Bradley County, just Bradley County, how many storage facilities have you seen? And as I say here, each facility's got anywhere from 20 to 100 individual units. People got a lot of stuff.
Then think about places that store RVs and boats.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all those that have popped
There you
up
go.
and how full they are.
I told someone this week, I said, people ought to move about every 10 years because they'll be motivated to get rid of a bunch of stuff. When Vicki and I, downsized and moved after being in a home for 39 years, we got rid of a bunch of stuff. And you know what? I don't have room to put anything anywhere. Just still got stuff everywhere.
Now, what gets set in here stays in here, right? So by the fact that Melanie's not here, nobody's gonna say anything about this to
Right,
her.
and Vicki's not here, so, as I refer to all this stuff that Vicki's got, okay. Matter of fact, if anybody is looking for Christmas decorations, I could have a sale the next time she goes off somewhere. Okay, I got boxes of that stuff I'll let you sort through.
In addition, what they're paying rent to store the stuff they got in there ain't worth what they're paying in rent.
You're exactly
They're
right.
losing money.
You're exactly right. Or they're in hock up to their eyeballs paying for that stuff. You know, and again, as I state here, if it's in storage, it's probably something that's rarely used. It's costly. It's costly. So what's driving all this? You know, why do we have so much stuff? You know, are we in competition with each other? You know, is it, well, if I've got more stuff than Jerry, then I'm better than Jerry, you know. It's that, you know, you gotta be one leg up on your neighbor. You gotta be just a little bit better, you know.
Well, it's also advertising. I mean, they're constantly telling you all this cool stuff you gotta have.
How many times have you heard an ad for something that says, you deserve this? You deserve, you worked hard for your money, you deserve to go in debt over your eyeballs for this, you know, to be in misery. As we used to say, when we was in the Navy, we talked about going on, you know, paying for, you know, a car or something like that. Yeah, you're gonna ride the dead horse for another 3 years or another 5 years. I had a friend of mine, I was in a sporting goods store, and he came in, he was all excited. He was absolutely thrilled. He had just bought a new boat. They had the boat show at the Cleveland Mall. When they had the Cleveland Mall, they had the boat show, and they had a boat show special. And he bought an aluminum boat, just rigged out aluminum bass boat. He was just so thrilled. He said, I can't believe I got such a deal. He said, I'm only paying $150 a month for this boat. I said, well, how long were you paying that for? He said, well, I don't know. I don't think he mentioned that. I said, you might want to consider that. I said, you got your paperwork? He said, yeah. He said, I just came from there. And so he goes out to his truck and gets his paperwork and brings it in. He's paying that $150 for the next 10 years on a boat that's worth $20,000. You know, if you multiply 150 times 120, it's way more than 20,000. I mean, I said, you're paying, you know, 3 times what that boat is worth. And I said, 10 years from now, when you're still paying on it, you're not gonna be able to get anything out of it. You know, what did they think about that? Well, they don't want you thinking about that. They just want you to know that good $150 a month, sign the paper. I told them, I said, fortunately for you, the state of Tennessee has a 3-day period where you can change your mind and you can get out of that scot-free. He turned around, went right back to the mall and handed them their papers back and said, I'm not buying this boat. But how many people have got hooked up into something like that, similar? You know, I'm kind of like Phil. The poor guy that tries to sell me a timeshare, man, he is wasting his time and effort. I don't want to own something that belongs to somebody else. You know, I only own it 1 week a year. No, well, what good is that going to do? Especially when they tell me what week I got. You know, so, but they make it sound so good, so slick. I mean, they've got this down. Oh, you need this, you deserve this. This is just for you. And of course, on something like that too, the model they show you is never like the one you actually get.
Right.
You know, I mean, they're slick about that. But, you know, as I said, and we've all seen the bumper sticker or something that said, you know, he who, you know, dies with the most stuff wins. I don't think so. The scripture tells you a whole lot about that. So as we get a little further down here, Jesus had an encounter with someone whose possessions were in control of him. If you're not in control of your possessions are in control of you. It's like Financial Peace University says, if you're not in control of your money is in control of you. Same concept. So Jesus meets the rich young ruler. He comes up and he's checked off all the boxes. He's always, he's always tithed, or he's lived, he's followed those 10 commandments. He's got them right down. He's checked the boxes. Oh, I'm good to go. I'm good to go. Looking for that blessing or that validation that, yep, you're the good, Jewish ruler. You're good to go. But Jesus knew his heart. And Jesus asked him a question, as he often does with us, that forces us to look deep into our heart. When Jesus asked the question, we can't fool him like we can each other. When we have to look in the mirror and answer that question, knowing the full truth, no, there's no pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. And in Matthew 19, verses 21 through 22, Jesus said to him, if you wish to be complete, go and sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. But when the young man heard this statement, he went away grieving, for he was one who owned much property. You see, this young man had a lot of possessions, but his possessions had all of him. God will not share your heart with anybody or anything. Your heart is his and his alone. He paid the ultimate price with Jesus on the cross for your heart, and he's not going to take anything less. Nothing less. But by saying this to the young man, he forced that young man to look within his heart and essentially reveal, well, what's most important to you? The kingdom of God or your possessions? And obviously, as he chose his possessions over following Jesus, it was revealed where his treasure was. It was revealed who his God was, and it had a little G. So I like what Wiersbe says here. He says, nowhere in the Bible are we taught that a sinner is saved by selling his goods and giving the money away. He never told that to Nicodemus, and you find it nowhere else in Scripture. But notice he didn't order the young ruler. He asked him. Simple question. He asked him, this is what's going to take for you to understand yourself within your heart, where your possessions are in priority with God. So, by his actions, we see that his possessions were his God, and therefore he couldn't obey Jesus' command to sell and follow. So, again, we seem to be driven and are consumed by our possessions. And as I state here, I think really it's a form of greed. It's, we just got to have more. We got to have more. Got to have more than our neighbor. We just got to have more. My precious grandmother used to have a saying. She talked about people who were greedy. She said they get all they can all they get, they sit on the lid and poison the rest. They want it all, and they don't want anybody else to have any more than them. They got to have that one level above. As long as they're king of the hill, that they're looking down on everybody else, that's where they want to be. And Jesus was very keen on making sure the disciples were aware of this and to guard against it, because let's face it, it's easy for us to get caught up in the possession game and the wants. God says he promised our needs would be met if we seek him. But boy, those wants are what get us in trouble. We just gotta want. And when you get what you want, there's that next thing that moves in line that you gotta want. It's the wanting. It's not the owning, it's the wanting that just kind of keeps snowballing us. But he cautioned his disciples in Luke 12, 15 to 21. He says, Then he said to them, beware and be on your guard against every form of greed. For not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions. And he told them a parable, saying, the land of a rich man was very productive. And he began reasoning to himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops? Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for you many years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you. And now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God.
That's the first storage unit being built.
There you go. The first storage unit. Yep, that's it. The first storage unit. Didn't do him much good, did it? I like Mark Twain's quote here as he defines civilization as a limitless multiplication of unnecessary necessities. We get all our priorities out of whack. You know, we call wants our needs, and our true needs a lot of times overlook to, for those wants. I'll never forget, and I know y'all heard similar stories. I was back in the back roads somewhere, I can't remember where I was going, but rounded a corner, and here is one of the most dilapidated, single-wide mobile homes I've ever seen. Grass growing up everywhere, but alongside of it was a little metal cover with a shiny bass boat and a shiny pickup truck. And I thought, now I wonder how bad his wife and kids are suffering in these conditions for him to have his toys. We can get caught up in our toys so bad. We can make our toys that we want seem like needs. And that's exactly what he's saying here. Unnecessary necessities. When Wiersbe says here, that measured by the living standards of the rest of the world, most believers in America are indeed wealthy people. I've seen this. When I first went to the mission field in Mexico, and I saw how those people lived, even in the larger towns, they're just such a state of living that it's kind of appalling. Garbage that's literally piled up in the street that the cars have to drive around until, maybe once a week there's some truck that comes up and they literally take the shovels or whatever and scoop the garbage up. And the stench is just horrendous. And then you get up into the mountains, into the villages of the indigenous peoples, who are the really poor people of Mexico. And, it's, as Phil has said, it's not, what am I going to eat today? It's am I going to eat today? Are they going to have just a little bit of beans? And, are they going to be able to grind enough corn to make a few tortillas? And that be their meal for the day. They're living in the thatched roof hut, and wondering if, a scorpion is going to sting them tonight, and, are they going to die from that? Because their day's journey from any kind of medical care. And yet we live in this opulence, where probably the poorest person in Bradley County is rich compared to those people. It's incredible how we lose sight of just how much God's blessing has been poured out on us. And Wiersbe referenced, 1 Timothy 6, and in verse 6 through 10 of that chapter, Paul says, but godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. Focus on that word, contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, and some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. There's a man in this town that, if I mentioned his name, you would recognize it immediately. But the desire to have something that nobody else has just consumes him. He's got to have that one thing that nobody else has, that one special thing. And a dear friend of mine who knew him was greatly concerned about his spiritual condition. And he boldly went to him and asked for just a bit of his time to meet and just talk. And he granted that, and they got together. And my friend did his best to share the gospel, to share Jesus with him, and try to get him to understand his need for Jesus, because he just explained to him, look, you're trying to fill that empty hole in your heart with stuff that you're buying all, you have all this stuff you want, and it's not, you can tell that you're not satisfied with it. And he said he listened, he sort of kept glancing at his watch, and said but he did hear him out. And finally, when the amount of time that he had allotted came up, he said, your time's up, I've got to go. He said, I've got something special that has just arrived. And my friend asked him, said, what is so special that's more important than a discussion about your eternal soul? He said, oh, I bought the dancing bear. Now, most of y'all are not as aged as I am, and maybe you don't remember Captain Kangaroo. But Captain Kangaroo had a character on there with a dancing bear that would come out. This man had bought one of the original dancing bear costumes and paid thousands upon thousands of dollars for it, just so he could say that he had something nobody else had. And he kind of just brushed my friend off, said, "No, your time's up, you gotta go, I've gotta go see my bear." Priorities all out of whack. Majoring on the minors. Just, what was his soul worth to him? To him, not much. So, people can get caught up quickly in this. And Mark 8:36 reflects just that scenario. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? You have pleasure for a season now. Yeah, those things are nice to enjoy now. I love getting in my boat when I have opportunity. But, it's just not that important to me. As you can see, I haven't used it in quite a while. It's getting dust. But, I wasn't always that way. It's been a process for me. The writer of Ecclesiastes here, Ecclesiastes 2:10-11, came to that realization kind of late in his life, as he's looking back and reflecting over his entire life. He writes that all that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted. And behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Chasing the wind, trying to grasp the wind, came to nothing. He's saying here, he had wasted his life in seeking things instead of seeking God. So, as I say here, as we grow in our Christian faith and our Christian character, there has to be a point where we got to step back and look at our attitude towards our stuff and our relationship with God. Where is it? As I said, this boat that I have, I waited 21 years before this boat came along, and because I started out, some of y'all know, the very first boat I got, I prayed for that boat, oh God, if you're in this, I know you. So I might as well have said, God, I'm gonna get this boat, so you might as well bless it. That's about the way that prayer actually and truthfully was. And God answered that prayer, and his answer was, okay, big boy, if that's the way you want it, you got it. Lord help, you talk about a giant money pit. I was working on it or pouring money into it and never using it. It was a nightmare. And finally, after, about 2 months of this, I thought, I stepped back and said, okay, Lord, I was not wise and correct in my approach to this boat. You made that abundantly clear to me, that this is not the time for me to have a boat. So please, Lord, help me get rid of this thing before it ruins me. Within 2 hours, I had a phone call from the guy I bought the boat from, and he said, man, I missed my boat. Would you be willing to sell it back to me? I'll give you what you paid for it. I said, I'm on the way with it right now. I tell you, you talk about breaking speed limits getting back to Chattanooga. Man, I put that thing in his driveway. You talk about singing the Hallelujah chorus all the way up White Oak Mountain. I mean, I was singing at the top of my lungs his praises. 21 years later, when I properly approached him, God, if you open the door for me to have a boat, then you put it together and it'll fall in place. Everything will be just right. And it wasn't just a few weeks when a dear friend of mine was going to buy a new boat and asked me if I wanted to buy his boat. And I had been given a stock option from Duracell many years prior to that had just come, had just matured. The cashing in of that stock option paid for the boat within 10 cents of all the fees and everything. 10 cents. And I said, okay, God, this is right. You put this together, because it couldn't happen otherwise. But yet, even with that boat became my God, because all I thought about was getting at him and using it. And that's all I talked about. That's all I wanted to do. And it literally became overwhelming to me and my family. I put that boat before my sons. I wanted to go out in the boat, but they were so little high, they'll just be trouble in the boat, And I had to get to a point where what the writer in Psalms talks about that finally got driven into my head. In Psalms 104:24, it says, "O Lord, how many are your works? In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions." You see, all this time, I thought that boat was mine. But it wasn't mine. It was his gift to me, but he still owned it. I just didn't acknowledge his ownership. I tried to take over that ownership for me. So, at the point where I really realized what that boat had become my God, and he really worked me over, and we started understanding about that ownership. And as he revealed to me, it's not just the boat. I don't own anything you have, according to you. It's all yours. It's your money, it's your house, it's your car. I'd stolen from God. It was all mine, not acknowledging that it was all his gift to me. And when I came to that realization, and I repented and told, okay, God, I don't want anything to come between me and you, especially some possession that at some point is going to rust or wither away or deteriorate. It's not worth it. And I said, and I knew that boat, what it had become. And I said, Lord, I'll sell the boat. And I really think God was trying to show me where I was and what was I willing to do. Was I willing to give up that prized possession to honor him? And so I put it on the market. And it never sold. And I realized then that it wasn't about the boat itself that he wanted me to sell it. It was he wanted me to recognize where it was in my life, and it changed the importance of it in my life. I realized it was a gift that he had given to me to use for my pleasure and enjoyment, but tempered by honoring him first with my life. And then he'll let me know when I can use it. And he wanted me to understand, okay, it has no worth to me. If God says sell it, I'll sell it in a heartbeat. I'm not going to hang on to it. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to try to argue with him. If it needs to go, then it's gone. But you tell me when it needs to go, it's gone. And he said, and that's where he wanted me to get with all of my possessions. The house, the cars, the money, everything, with my family. Could I give my family to him? Could I give my sons to him, my grandchildren? Would I be willing to say, God, they're yours. As much as it might hurt me, they're yours. You do with them as you please to bring you honor and glory. It took years for me to get there. Years. And sometimes I veer off the path, and then he kind of, hey, that's not for you. That's got too much importance to you. You're going to put it over me. So I let him guide me in that. He tells, he talks about worry. What our possessions, if we don't have them in the right priority, we're going to worry over them. It's going to generate worry. What if I lose it? What if something happens to it? Boy, do I have enough to get by? Do I have enough to can I compete with my neighbors? Or Lord, how am I going to pay for this? I can't pay my tithes, this month because I got, that boat payment. Well, gee, Lord, that opportunity to give to that missionary, I got that boat payment, so I can't really fork over that money for that missionary. We're worrying so much, that it's not only affecting our health, as Phil says, and even in his own life, he's admitted and confessed that he's a world-class warrior, but it's a sin. It's an obvious sin. Luke 12:30 and 34 says, "For all these things the nations of the world eagerly seek, but your Father knows that you need these things. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to charity. Make yourselves money belts which do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Again, God is not going to share your heart with anything or anybody. My heart was attached to that boat solidly. God didn't have room. There was no room for God because that boat took it all up. That had to change. And it did change. So if we can get to the point where we recognize that everything that we have belongs to God, it's all his, whether it's a material thing, it's finances or whatever, our home, our family, if we can give it all to him, we're free. We're just the caretakers, just the managers. Okay, God, it's yours. What do you want me to do with it? Might to keep it, use it, might to sell it, might to give it away. But it's yours. You just let me know. I'll take care of it. I'll keep it up until you tell me what to do with it. So This, Worsby quotes the late chaplain of the Senate, Peter Marshall, where he prayed that ulcers would not become the badge of our faith. Man, if our stuff is creating that much worry in us where, we're getting ulcers, trying to figure out what we're gonna do with it, how we're gonna pay for it and all that, then that ought to be, a symbol that, man, this stuff's killing me. I gotta get rid of something because it's gonna kill me. So, Jesus tells the disciples in Luke 14:33, so then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his own possessions. Now, again, Jesus is not saying that we gotta, sell it all, put on the sackcloth, and go beg on the corner. The giving up part is giving up ownership, restoring the rightful ownership of God to everything we have. God wants us to have the things that we need, and He wants us to have the pleasure things that we enjoy using. But we have to have the right attitude about them. When the Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. The prosperity gospel people will say, hey, that's your ticket. Name it and claim it. You claim $1 million, you'll get it. All you got to do, if you pray and you've got enough faith, you'll get everything you want. You'll be a millionaire. Well, I'm sorry. If you look at that verse in context, in the intent of the words, where God takes you with that is, as you align yourself with God and you draw closer to Him, your desires change to His desires. Your desires mimic what His desires are for you. So your perspective changes, your wants change, because now you're looking through a different lens. You're looking through God's lens of what He sees for your life. What do you need? Yeah, what do you want? Is there something that you want that you think might, give you some pleasure? And well, what's your attitude towards it? Is it going to be yours, or is it going to be mine that you're just using as I give you opportunity? The perspective is key to all of it. So, there's referencing of this. We see this in the early church, whereas they came together, and they were a mix. There were rich people, there were poor people. I mean, the tapestry of the church, even today, this permeates. There's every class, and all are welcome. We don't cull anybody. Everybody's welcome here. And it says there in Acts chapters 2 and then again in chapter 4 that's referenced there. And all those who had believed were together and had all things in common. And they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing them with all as anyone might have need. They were all concerned with each other's welfare for the common good. Nobody ought to be, eating to gluttony when somebody else sitting next to them is starving to death. True. They shared all things in common as they had need. And he talked about Barnabas. He said, now Joseph, a Levite of Cyprian birth, who was also called Barnabas by the apostles, which translated means son of encouragement, and who owned a tract of land, sold it, and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. There was there was a lot of the church members. Remember, these were all house churches. But whatever need was there, those who had been blessed and had abundance would give of that to those who didn't. So where does that put us? Only you know. Only you can stand in front of the mirror and honestly ask God, what's my relationship to my stuff and you? Am I holding on to ownership, or have I given it back to you where it belongs? as I said earlier, moving about every 10 years is a good idea, because it really shows you the stuff that you've got that you don't use, or you just accumulated over time. I have gotten to where, I'll do about once a year or so, I'll go through the closet, I hadn't wore that shirt, I hadn't wore that shirt, I am not wearing that shirt.
Yep.
Again, what said here stays here. Tell Vicki that I refuse to wear pink shirts. Not gonna happen. So pink shirts that come in gifts either get re-gifted or they go to Carrying Place, or, they go somewhere. Not going on this fat boy.
But Carl's okay.
Coral is a
Coral.
different, coral is, that's,
Carl,
yeah.
Carl,
yeah.
as we say in the South.
Yeah, so just saying, that fuchsia is also known as electric red.
Electric red.
Electric red, yeah.
You wear whatever Vicky tells you to wear.
Now, again, this doesn't leave this room. Just,
That's 2 times.
Todd, will you control your wife up there?
Hey, you told our testimony about the boat.
That's what I
Oh,
was
man.
I prayed for a boat, and he gives me a boat and a wife, so.
Hey,
I wish you'd
I got
used
my
different
baptism partner
than
right here.
I had to use what God gave me, I'm sorry.
boat and big trucks, I don't believe I'm gonna go to sleep tonight.
But, again, if we honestly go through the garage and we go through, the closets and see, what do you want to do with this stuff? You got someplace you need this? Does this need to go to the Carrying Place or the Restore?
Now you're meddling.
I'm just, he gave it to me, to take it up with the author, because it's not mine. But, even if you've got a storage building, that you're paying on every month, go over there and open that door and look at the stuff that's in there and say, do I really need this if I'm having to store it? Now, people who are in transition, they're going from, one house to another, they're building a house, and, that's different. Transition is totally different. You gotta have a temporary place to store your stuff while you're in that period. But I'm talking about people that's got stuff that are in storage units that they don't, they maybe see it once a year. Maybe it's time to say, okay, God, what do you want me to do with your stuff that's in here? Because this $295 a month that I'm paying for this thing, wonder what a missionary could do with that. Wonder what Pastor Mindy could do with that over in Gambia. I wonder what that missionary in Mexico could do with that. Only you can answer those questions as you really seek what God would have you to do with His stuff that you're managing for Him. If any of you have any examples, maybe you've had God's changed your path, you'd be willing to share some of maybe how God changed you and changed your perspective on something like this. Share it with us if you would. We got a little bit of time.
The enemy is sneaky. And if he can't, he's gonna try a full frontal attack first. He's gonna try to keep you from spending time in his word. He's gonna try to keep you from praying. He's gonna try to keep you from being a part of a fellowship, participating in Bible studies, all that kind of thing. But if he can't get you with the full frontal attack, then he'll blindside you. He'll come at you from your weakness, from the flanks. And one of the ways he does that is, and that's why the whole salesmanship game for big ticket items has changed, because now nobody sells anything that's expensive anymore based on price. You look at the advertising, it's all so much a month. And the implied message there, and most people fall for it, or at least fall for the thought is, well, I think I could afford that. I think I can afford that payment. And that's where we get in trouble. Because we think, I think I've got enough margin where I could fit that in. If everything goes right, I think I can fit that in and make that payment. And that's why you see so many fifth wheel trailers for sale on Facebook Marketplace that are only 2 years old. And you see boats that are only 2 years old. And you see campers that are only 2 years old. And you see all manner of things that are now worth 40, 50, 60% of what they paid for them, and they're only 2 years old. And that's just a testament to what's happening.
Yeah, because as soon as you sign the paper and start making those payments, that's when the transmission goes out in your vehicle, you know, and, oh, well, where am I gonna come up with that $5,000? I'm strapped so tight. Well, you know, it wouldn't have been if you hadn't signed on that dotted line for that great deal. Anyone else? Well, all right, well, thank you for your participation and your comment. I'm sorry if I gigged you, David, it stung me too. I was like, God, do you really want me to go there?
Experience.
I mean, my goodness.